I expect my prospect to ask about is, okay, benefits. How does that work? What am I supposed to do with all of this? So making sure that they really are asking those important questions, not only about the business, but also about how this position will impact them.
You can't buy that. You can't educate someone into having more character. To me, that's innate. You can't really train someone on that. If you see them lacking strong character from jump, don't feel like you can train them into being someone who's better. It's probably not going to happen. And that's a huge mistake that I've made before.
Welcome back to Hot Tea with Umo and Bri, where we spill the real tea on sustainable business growth. Today, we're talking about something every growing founder needs to master: how to spot an A player. Because hiring isn't just about filling a role, it's about protecting your time. Amen to that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Your culture and your client experience. The right hire can elevate your entire business, or it could cause it to crumble, and the wrong one can slow everything down. So, today we're breaking down how to identify, attract, and retain A players. Gosh, I'm kind of in the feels of this right now.
Girl, let me tell you. I feel like the tea that you just spilled on, like, it can make everything come crumbling down or slow down. That is so true because I feel like when you hire people, the ultimate goal is that they're going to help support the business, right? They're going to help things to move forward, progress,
Yeah.
grow, etc. But you don't always know that, I guess, whenever you first hire someone for a lot of reasons. You might be hiring them because you think they might be really skilled at something, or you might love their personality or whatever. And then sometimes when they get in the mix, it's like, wait a minute, this is a problem. So I don't know. I feel like this is something that most business owners run into at some point, and then from trial and error, you start figuring it out.
100%. I mean, I always say that no matter how long you've been in business as an entrepreneur, I mean, this is, gosh, year what for me? I can't even do math. I mean, since 2011, right? So I don't even know what the math is. I'm not going to try. Moving on. I've been doing this for a while. And I'm still learning and still growing, because what may have worked in the past may not work now. And I definitely think that it's important to really take your time, even if there's a sense of urgency, like, oh gosh, I need help, my business is growing and I need to fill a gap. It's better to take your time and find the right candidate,
Mhm.
than rush just to fill a role, because you end up wasting time in the long run if you do that.
Mhm.
And I feel like actions speak louder than words. I can't tell you how many times I've had prospects or had a hire that's like, "Oh my gosh, this is just the greatest opportunity. Oh my gosh, I can see myself kind of being an extension of the practice and being able to, grow in my expertise, and the autonomy is so amazing." And then you get in the thick of it and it's like, "Oh gosh, a completely different human being." And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for all people involved. It's really important that they understand where your business is going. They care about the mission, not just about the paycheck. And when it comes to private practice, with dietitians, or really even any coach, any type of athletic professional, I mean, you've really got to think about that and vet it out, because I 100% feel like those first few months
Mhm.
say so much about the hire, right?
Mhm.
So it's one thing to say, yeah, I'm willing to hustle and do all these things. They get in the role and they don't do anything.
Girl, crickets.
They don't do anything, or they expect you to do it all, or they expect to lean on the brand to do it all for them. And there's a lot of things that you guys can avoid
Mhm.
just based upon the mistakes that we've made. So definitely take a lot of notes during this episode.
Mhm. Ooh, listen, so true, all of that. So let's dive right into it. Like, let's talk about what actually makes an A player. So before you even get into the hiring process, you have to know what an A player even looks like. And if you haven't hired before, you're probably not going to know what this is. This is us kind of speaking from experience and having hired multiple people, or even had to fire or have lost people. So I know one of the main things that come underneath the title of an A player is that they take ownership. And you mentioned that already. From the moment they're hired, they are taking ownership over their tasks, right? They're not just like checking the box that, oh, this was done. It's more of, hey, I see these tasks I'm supposed to get done, or these are some of the tasks that you've recommended I do to prepare me to see clients, etc. But they don't just take those tasks and start checking them off. They're diving deeper. They're asking questions. They're exploring it. They are putting themselves in the shoes of whatever task you've given them, and they are truly making it their own, and they are moving forward with problem solving on their own before the problems even pop up. And
Right.
so I know for me, that's a green flag when I see someone taking initiative and not just checking the boxes saying they've done it, but checking it, asking questions, making sure they fully understand, adding their own spin to it. Because again, that kind of goes back to the difference between like if you have W-2 or 1099, right? There's going to be a difference on how people approach things. But taking ownership over task completion, I think, is one of those huge things that makes somebody an A player.
100%. Initiative is huge. Accountability is huge. I couldn't agree more on all of those points. That's definitely a green flag. And I think really just, I'm the type of person, like, I don't mind a ton of questions, right? Like,
Mhm.
especially if it's like, okay, I understand that you have really researched whatever it is, and maybe it's an error on my part. Maybe I wasn't really crystal clear on something, but asking questions definitely lets me know this individual is thinking things through, wanting to make sure that they're efficient and doing things the right way. And I really feel like also just, them showing that they really want to serve clients,
Mhm.
serve people.
Yep.
I feel like that shows in, okay, like, just give you specific examples of my business. Okay, so this is what I was thinking for my intake process. Da, 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 da. Is it okay if I send, a welcome text to the client before we actually start? Just little things like that. I mean,
Mhm.
shows a lot.
Yep.
Things that I don't and that I have seen and experienced is just being incredibly quiet. Communication is everything to me.
Mhm.
Communication should be everything to any business owner. So if you have an open door of communication to your team, they should utilize that. And
Mhm.
sometimes silence speaks very loudly, right?
Mhm.
And if I know that I'm not hearing from someone for a while and they're just kind of going through the motions, doing their own thing, that's a huge red flag for me. And
Mhm.
I always say, this is my philosophy, I can't fix anything if you don't tell me if there's something going on. I can't
Mhm.
know that you're struggling with anything if you don't let me know, right? And we're not parents, we're not going to hold your hand. That's not what we do as entrepreneurs.
Right.
We are bosses, but communication really does happen both ways.
Mhm, girl, because we're not mind readers. Like, that's
Right.
the thing. Like, you're not you people aren't brought on your team for you to read their minds. Like, that's not how it works. And just like you said, I agree. Like, establishing that clarity in regard to your visions, your values, what you expect, all that type of stuff. I mean, there should be alignment there when you are bringing people onto your team. Now, granted, some people pull the wool over your eyes, and make it seem like they are that person, but they might not be when they actually get into the mix of it. But
Yeah.
sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. But the goal is to make sure that there is alignment, and
Yeah.
once they are on your team, and again, we'll talk about spotting this in the hiring process, but like that consistency and reliability is huge, right? People saying, doing what they say they're going to do is, for me, like that's one of a huge component. Like I'm very big on like if you say you're going to do something, you 100% should do it, no matter how long it takes you or whatever. Like there should be a, hey, this was done, right? And, sometimes that doesn't happen when it comes to your hires. And that can really suck because, especially if it's something that they've like said they're going to do for their clients, right? Or they've said they're going to do to improve their skills or whatever. And then they don't do it. It's like, hey, I thought this was something you were going to work on, So, again, just reliability, consistency, the communication piece. Oh my gosh. I'm the same. Like, if you're not communicating, I don't know what to tell you because it's like
Ugh.
can't help. We can't help you if you're not telling us about what's going on. Like, there's no way possible to support someone when there's no communication at all.
Yes, and I mean, and that kind of goes to the next point of like how to spot these things during the hiring process. So you want to make sure that, they're bringing solutions and not just answers during the interview process, right? So, they're thinking critically during interviews, they ask thoughtful questions about the business. It really should be a two-way conversation, not just you asking questions, but them asking questions too.
Mhm,
They should be coming prepared with questions to ask, whether it's about, hey, how is this going to look like? So if you're 1099, questions I expect my prospect to ask about is, okay, benefits. How does that work? What am I supposed to do with all of this?
mhm,
And that lets me know that they really are invested, they really are interested. If it's something new to them, they're willing to, do what they need to do research wise to figure that stuff out. So making sure that they really are asking those important questions, not only about the business, but also about how this position will impact them.
mhm,
And then you also want to make sure that you're like discussing examples of going above expectations. Ownership in previous roles. I mean, for me, I know that right now I'm in the hiring process, and something I just kind of said was, listen, like, initiative is huge, right? Like, this is an opportunity that you can really run with, become part of a wonderful team, but also use this opportunity to grow as a professional. And professional growth is not just doing what you do, not just providing the service. It's also, hey, like, how can I put myself out there? How can I utilize some of these client experiences to do more research and put up more information to gain more clients? And there's so many different examples of that. And so, hey, that's really important, especially if you're the type of entrepreneur that wants your team to be obviously what's the word I'm looking for? Unified, but at the same time, allow each of them to be very authentic in what they do.
mhm. Girl, that's so taking initiative. I mean, also, like you said, having the solutions and coming to the table with their questions, being thoughtful about stuff, but the initiative is huge because what I find is a lot of people will mass apply to opportunities that they see, right? And they get in the interview process or whatever, and they're just going about it interviewing every job the same exact way. And you can tell when they come into that interview, if they're not asking you questions or they're not talking about your philosophies because they've gone through and they've researched their website and they've gone through some of your videos or whatever you've put online to match and make sure that it's aligned, then you know that it's probably just them applying for a position somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, there needs to be some sort of like initiative that they've taken because they'll get in these jobs and they'll expect you to do everything for them
Man.
when you on the flip side are like, no, you have to you should be taking some initiative on your own. And so then you have a mismatch in expectations, and
Hmm.
that never ends well.
Never.
So it's one of those things where you have to be on the same page from jump, and you can spot it from the resume. You can see initiative from the resume. You can ask questions in the interview process to ask them about, hey, what is a project that you made your own and you really flipped it and turned it around, right? Like, what are some things that you feel like you've done from a leadership perspective that has led to your success in your career? Questions like that that make them think critically, that they should be able to rattle off in an instant because they're not going to be expecting that. You typically don't have those questions just listed on like questions that you ask during interviews, but they should be able to answer that type of stuff. And I think one other thing, and I this is something that I've kind of taken a risk on in the past and it came to bite me in the butt later. Energy and presence matter.
Mm,
Someone's energy and how they approach an interview, 9 chances out of 10 is going to be an exact reflection of how they will show up in client sessions.
man.
So do not expect them to show up one way in an interview and be the complete opposite when it
Yeah.
comes to your it's not going to happen. So if you feel like when you're doing the interview that I don't see empathy. I don't see trauma informed care. I don't see connection. It's not going to miraculously show up in the client sessions. In fact, it will show up 10 times worse. So just know when you spot those red flags during the interview process, go
Mhm.
ahead and see it for what it is, right? Don't ignore it or think that it's going to change all of a sudden just because they're gonna be now in front of a client instead of in front of you.
Amen to that. Yeah, and energy and presence definitely matter. And I think really what it's important to also just to kind of add to that is like just making sure that you already have identified what your work culture and everything is, like what your team culture is. I think it's again kind of fine for people to be different. You don't want the same type of, employee, but they definitely need to fit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's important. If you don't already have that established, it's important for you to establish that first. That way you know that, and then when you have all these interviewees, these prospects, you kind of know what to spot, what's a green flag, what's a red flag. And to your point, Brie, like, hey, is potentially hiring this person going to continue with the good reputation that my business has,
Mhm.
all of our clients are raving about?
Man, oh my god. You know what? Something came to mind too, because this has happened actually in a few interviews that we've done. And I think it's a major red flag. And I want you to share like something that was a red flag in an interview you've done. But like, when you work virtually or you see clients virtually, having a really like business like setting when you're doing your virtual, sessions is very important, right? Your
Yeah.
backgrounds, where you're doing things, lighting, etc. So like if you have someone that's scheduled to do an interview and like they're doing their interview from the car while
Ew.
they're driving,
Ew.
huge,
Ew.
right? Like huge ick. Don't do that. Like that. And that's, I cannot tell you that has happened so many times.
I
And so
can't.
for me, it's like you don't respect the time or the process of what's going on. Like you're showing up like this to be hired. So I don't know what you're going to show up like. What is time for a client
Oh.
session? You could be in your pajamas. You could be, I don't know where you're going to be, like girl.
Something, I just, call me old school. I don't know what it is. I take that title with all
Mhm,
pride. Because I don't understand it. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell you to, to add to that how ridiculous like exiting a role
Yeah. Yeah.
has been. So you can't just be like, "Hey, by the way, I want to tell you when my last day to accept clients is." Okay. I mean,
It's
I can
terrible.
tell you when your last day is actually. Uh,
God.
it's just
Oh,
here
I
and
wanna
here. All jokes
cry.
aside, guys, what we're talking about is lack of professionalism, and
Yes.
I truly do wonder if it's just something because I know that growing up, like I it was just something that was just observed,
Yeah.
learned, I heard about it. I can't necessarily just go back and say that, oh, in undergrad or in any of my specific classes, that was anything that was taught.
Right.
But, it's just something I knew, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a way about going things. There's a way about putting in your notice. There's a way about interviewing, and back then it wasn't really virtual, but
Right.
you know what I mean? There's a way that you present yourself. There's a way that you speak. There's a way that you address. You follow up with a thank you email. There's just these things that you do. And
Yes.
so, yeah, like those are definitely signs that the individual has room to grow immensely.
Mhm.
And then they might not just be a good fit for your organization. And I always just feel like situations like that are almost a blessing in disguise because, I definitely want to make sure we all want to make sure as entrepreneurs that whoever we hire is an extension of who we are, our business, our
Mhm.
brand, and that they can represent it well and everything that they do. So y'all just keep it professional and look
Mhm.
for professionalism.
Yeah. Listen, because it just doesn't make you keep your standards. Keep your
Yeah,
standards in hiring,
don't lower
right?
'em.
What you would do, when you think about, okay, how would I show up to an interview, how would I show up to my first day of work, you
Yeah,
know? And I say, hold the people that you're bringing on board to your team to the same standard. Still in light of people having different personalities and the way they approach things, totally fine. But what's the consistent baseline and foundation, right? Once you
yeah,
figure that out for your business, then you can kind of hold everybody to that standard regardless of their personality type. So I think that really kind of takes us to our next section because as you guys have heard, we have seen a lot of things. We've made some mistakes in the hiring process. And Uma, you mentioned something already, hiring out of urgency. And that is something that I have done before. If y'all have been listening to the pod, you know that I've done this a few times previously, especially when a baby has reared their head and said, "Hey, I'm on my way." So I've had to hire out of urgency in the past in light of maternity leave. And fortunately, the people that we've brought on because of that ended up being good hires. However, oftentimes that can lead to you just kind of hiring someone that's not really a good fit because you are rushing and you're kind of just trying to find someone and you might miss some of those obvious red flags just because you're moving so fast. And I think that can be a tough thing. And the other thing I think, again, this is something I have done is prioritizing skill over character.
mm,
And that is probably one of the worst things you can do
yeah,
because when you think about it, like we all have skills, right? We all know the science. We all have the educational piece. Some of us are going to be a little more experienced than others based off how much hands-on experience and stuff you got. But like character, y'all, character, you can't buy that. You
yeah.
can't educate someone into having more character. Like to me, that's innate. And it's something that like you can't really train someone on that. And so if you see them lacking strong character from jump, don't feel like you can train them into being someone who's better. Like it's probably not going to happen. And that's a huge mistake that I've made before when hiring for sure.
Absolutely. Same here. I mean, and I think that it's one of those things sometimes to where unfortunately, it's one of those things that's harder to pinpoint
Mhm.
up front. But I think that it's easy to identify shortly, pretty soon after, they fulfill the role.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think it's really important just to take your time for so many different reasons, as I've already mentioned. And I think that like, even in that interview process, like something I always ask is like, hey, this is kind of the situation with private practice, right? Like there's a lot of opportunity. It can definitely be lucrative, fulfilling, all the things. However, there is a growing period. There is a grit period, right? Like you have to build your client base. You have to understand how to attain clients, retain clients, understand your flow, establish all of those things. And my question is always like, are you willing to put that hard work in the front end in
Mhm.
order to really reap the benefits long term? And obviously, the answer is always like, oh yeah. But then when you get in the thick of it,
Mhm.
it immediately shifts, right? There's a
Mhm.
credentialing process. We have no control over those, especially if you do accept insurance. For those of you that do or are thinking about it, there's a process, there's a time frame that we literally have no control of.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that will dictate how full someone can be. So there's just so many other things. But I think it's important whenever you are hiring that you ask these tough questions, whatever those look like for your business. Maybe you're a coach and you're like, okay, hey, this is what we're dealing with. We're going to start working with another team and
Mhm.
XYZ. This is what's happening. Are you willing to work these ridiculous hours at first?
Yep.
I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mhm.
But making sure that you highlight the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
um, because I feel like that is an easier way to identify character
Mhm.
just based on their responses.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think a lot of that aligns with just like creating that environment, having that clarity up front. Don't be afraid to be honest in the hiring process, even if that runs the risk of you losing a good candidate, be honest, right? Because if you
Yeah.
lose them because of your honesty about what's going on and the expectations and all that, chances are they weren't meant for your practice anyway.
Mhm.
So be clear about what's going on, the expectations, your leadership, and how that goes and what they can expect especially in the first few months because like you said like we both take insurance so it's one of those things where like it's 90 days you gotta wait
Yeah.
so if you want to see clients it'll be self-pay You're going to have to, bring in some of your own, or you can wait for the slow trickle of self pay. But like, again, it's just one of those things where we have to be honest and transparent with that. So if they're not willing to take that time, we can't really do anything about that. So again, just being honest and transparent so people know what to expect. And again, if they walk away from the opportunity because of your honesty,
Wasn't meant to.
sayonara.
Absolutely. It wasn't meant to be, hey, just consider it a blessing in disguise for all parties involved. And
Mhm.
you keep moving on until the right one comes.
Period.
Easy
Period.
peasy, lemon squeezy.
Mhm. Well, all right, y'all. That's the tea for today. A players don't just change your workload, they change your business trajectory. So hire slow, lead well, and build a team that can grow with you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow us on the gram per usual at Hot Tea with Uma and Bri. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you press that like button. Follow our podcast on your favorite listening platform. And if you want to grow alongside other founders, come join our community. Community, it's our think space for business owners like us. And we will see you next time. That's the tea, y'all.
Bye, guys.